Good morning, everybody. Please can I welcome everyone to this meeting of Cabinet, decision day for Cabinet Member for Economic Recovery, taking place from the Walton Suite in the Winchester Guildhall. The time is 9:30 a.m. My name is Councillor Martin Todd, Chairperson and Cabinet Member for Economic Recovery. Please can I advise you that this meeting is being audio recorded and live streamed from the Council's website. In addition, a video recording of the meeting will be uploaded to the Council's YouTube channel after the meeting. Please can I remind any officers joining virtually to turn off their cameras and mute their microphones until invited to speak. Please can I also remind members to speak clearly and to remember to use a microphone. Finally, can I please ask everyone to ensure that mobile phones and other electronic devices are either on silent or switched off entirely. The first item on the agenda is disclosure of interests, and I need to declare a personal but non-prejudicial interest in that I am a county councillor, which also the county council has heavy involvement in highways issues and was consulted on these decisions. The second item on the agenda is public participation. And I've been informed of one person who wishes to participate, which is Mr. Ian Tate. Mr. Tate, do you want to say your piece now or wait until we get to a particular agenda item?
Chair, it's the second item, item 6, and I'm quite happy to speak at that point, if I may. Okay, no,
that will be absolutely fine. Item 3 is visiting councillors' representation, and I have Councillor Bronk, who I know wishes to make a representation on item 3 on the agenda, item 4 on the agenda, which is the verbal update on the traffic regulation order programme. Councillor Bronk, would you like to come forward and say your piece?
Thank you very much, Councillor Todd, for enabling me to speak. I'm sorry I didn't submit the formal application within time, so I'm very grateful for your concession on this occasion. I'd like to refer to some thoughts I have on the administration of the TRO programme, and first maybe give you a short bit of background for the reasons for making these comments and some suggestions. In 2019 I was elected, and I was aware that the Twyford Parish Council had discussed various TROs of interest to the community, and I decided, because I was keen to ensure things were being progressed, to follow some of these up, although I hadn't been involved in the applications. And so I made an inquiry into some of the TROs, and I was told, oh yes, they're in the pipeline, it'll be maybe 3 months or so before consultation commences. Thereafter, I followed up again, and I was told, sorry, it was busier than we expected, it'll be 6 months. And then in February 2020, there was still no sign of any progress. And I spoke to a different officer who said, well, we had a look at things and we're focusing on larger schemes. And I said, well, you know, surely there must be some concession for matters of safety or other reasons. And he said, yes, matters of safety would be included with a greater, have greater priority. It then so happened that in October 21, Twyford residents are extremely concerned about a range of traffic issues, and I'm now chair of the Twyford Parish Traffic Solutions Focus Group. And it was through that role that I became aware that a number of parents had grave concerns about a crossing point in Finch's Lane to cross over the road to go up a short footpath to the school. It doesn't qualify for a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit because the school premises aren't adjacent to the road. They're 20 metres further up from the road. But there were 100 signatories seeking improvements to the crossing point. The school was pressing the county council for improvements, and the parish council supported improvements. They were seeking double yellow lines for about 2 parking places in order to improve sight lines for the children crossing the road, to get to the other side. So I'm very pleased to say that my continual pressure enabled me to receive an email on Friday from Hampshire County Council referring to an interim solution that they were proposing with Winchester City Council officers, and that was to provide a white line, which I understand is quicker or easier or less administratively difficult to put in place as an interim solution until such time as perhaps we'll either find, if the white line isn't effective, that we need to progress to double yellow. I was particularly pleased on this occasion to see that I did gain support, because I know that the County Council uses a casualty reduction focus, and of course we were hoping that no child will be injured whilst we were seeking this crossing. But my wider concerns are that we need to tell people whose applications are lost within the system and haven't been progressed for several years that they're stagnant and might not see the light of day. Twyford had 6 parking spaces that it was seeking to help the local shop owner and help people park temporarily to visit the surgery. Those are not being progressed. And whilst we want to help economic recovery in our towns and cities, it's vital to recognise that 6 places extra with limited parking in Twyford have an enormous benefit for the community. So in conclusion, whilst I'm very grateful for the resources that are available, I hope that we might be in a position to carry out a more intensive risk assessment in the context of the location that needs some of these improvements to help the smaller communities that we have so that they have a chance at accessing some of these resources, and maybe to suggest that when we come to look at the next revision of the scheme commencing in April 2023, that we maybe consider giving 10 or 15% of the resource to enable some of the small requests to be at least considered and included, and therefore it's not just Winchester and the market towns maybe that benefit, and that Twyford's 4 parking spaces can progress. But in the meantime, of course, I'm extremely grateful for the suggestion of the white line, and I hope that that will be given priority over applications to street parties, much as I favour celebrating the Platinum Jubilee. So thank you very much for hearing me out, and I'm extremely grateful.
Thank you, Councillor Brock. I would stress there is a bit of a deadline for street parties, since it's not possible to delay the Platinum Jubilee, and it is important that we fulfil requests of that nature. But Mr. Hickman, I believe, are you able to give us an update on what on the traffic regulation of the programme? And perhaps also if you can address some of the comments on made by Councillor Brock.
Yes, certainly. I think Tracy and I are fairly new to this, and we took over a programme a couple of years ago, and there was clearly some confusion about this particular scheme, so I apologise for that. What we've done since by doing the programme or approving the programme through a decision day like this is to make it public and explicit in terms of what our priorities are and how we review our schemes, and that was that's set out each time we bring the programme forward for approval. I think what we could probably get better at is liaising with our ward councillors about schemes that haven't been included on that programme and why, and do that before the decision day. So I think we can take that on board. Bearing in mind that things are going to be changing anyway with Hampshire County Council's agency arrangements, but I believe Candace Tots is going to say something about that anyway. So yes, that's where we are, and Hampshire County Council will arrange for the interim measure, the white line bar marking, to be put in place. So that shouldn't be affected by the strip parties, because they're doing that rather than us.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hickman, and I think your proposal, I would say, if we explicitly make sure that we engage with both ward councillors and parishes ahead of publishing the list, I think that will be a useful thing to do. recognising that we have limited resource, and we're probably not even in the position of being able to offer, you know, a scheme to every single ward in the event that every single ward wanted one. There is an important change likely to happen on Thursday. The County Council has announced that it's wishing to take back the on-street parking and traffic management agency from all district councils in Hampshire, effective, I think, the end of March 2023. And they are set on the assumption that the paper is approved on Thursday to make that decision on Thursday. There will be a scrutiny meeting in the morning, and the decision will be made in the afternoon. At the same time, something which gives us a sense of what may prove to be a county priority is that they're announcing the introduction of on-street parking in Lymington, despite the opposition of local businesses and the local county councillor. And concerningly, because this is something that the City Council has asked for, not as part of a joined up parking and access plan for Lymington, but effectively on a fairly unilateral basis. So that is a question of concern for all our market towns. Because of this change and the fact that there will be a hard stop to our role in parking enforcement and traffic management at the end of March 2023, I've asked officers to produce a revision to the work plan that reflects the fact that any longer term project, for example, looking at the introduction of a new controlled parking zone area on a significant scale, or anything that would take more than 12 months to complete, can no longer be part of the programme and will have to be something that we ask that Hampshire take on in the longer term. So there will be a review of the programme, effectively with the lens that we are able either to get Hampshire's agreement to long-term commitment to a particular scheme, or that we expect to have the scheme fully completed, done, advertised and implemented before the end of March 2023. And so the intention would be that at probably the first decision day after PERDA, so in the new political year, or new council year, would look at a revised traffic regulation order programme with the extra level of consultation that we have talked about, that Mr. Hickman has talked about. We will, of course, as the Twyford programme illustrates, continue to collaborate as closely as we can with the County Council to ensure that if there are measures that can be implemented via them rather than via us, that we are able to make that happen. The next item on the agenda is the Broadway Sunday Experimental Traffic Regulation Order, which is due to be introduced by Tracy Haskett and Andy Hickman. So if you could take us through the order and what's proposed.
Thank you. This report details the representations received during the experimental traffic regulation order in the Broadway, Winchester, and recommends that the order is made permanent. The experimental order prohibits vehicles between the entrance of the bus station and the Broadway, on the Broadway and the junction with Colebrook Street, Market Lane, on Sundays between 7 AM and 7 PM, and this is to enable Sunday markets to be held on the Broadway. When experimental orders are introduced, there's a period of 6 months where objections can be made, and during this period there are 3 representations, 2 in support and 1 objecting to the scheme. I'd like to point out that the following supporting representation was omitted from paragraph 4.4 of the report and should be noted. I support the Broadway Market TRO. The more you can reduce city centre traffic, the better it is for pedestrians like me. Full details of the other representations are detailed in paragraph 4.4 of the report, along with our response. The objection raises concerns over pedestrian safety, particularly those with mobility and visual impairment, as a result of the additional traffic using Colebrook Street whilst Broadway is closed. The issues raised include vehicles mounting the pavement to pass oncoming vehicles, vehicle speeds, foot and footway parking, as well as maintenance issues. In response to the objection, police road casualty statistics have been analysed, and there were no accidents within Colebrook Street during the trial period to 30th of June 2021. Due to the road alignment, width and character of Colebrook Street, vehicles travel at low speeds, and since the removal of through traffic from the square, traffic flows have significantly reduced. This decreases the likelihood of traffic or safety issues on Colebrook Street. We will continue to monitor, and with regards to the maintenance issues, these are responsibility of Hampshire County Council as the Highway Authority. The Sunday Market's been operating in Broadway since August 2020 under a temporary traffic regulation order introduced under COVID legislation. The current experimental TRO was brought into force following the temporary order and mirrors those arrangements, and it's continued to operate successfully. Due to the benefits of the scheme, it's recommended that the experimental traffic order is made permanent.
Thank you, Ms. Haskell. That's very helpful. Given that there is support and separate from the informal consultation, I've had very positive feedback on the use of the Broadway, for example, for the farmers market and the art market. I think this is a very well-made recommendation and one I support, although I think the, as you highlight, there are some things that we should look at in the context of the future traffic regulation order programme, particularly in terms of the days of operation of residents parking in Colebrook Street, that should be considered to see if we are able to improve things further. But clearly, the fundamental decision of the experiment of the experimental traffic regulation order has succeeded. It is a successful experiment, and so the decision is to make it permanent is one that I support. So the recommendation in the paper are that the Winchester City Council prohibition of vehicles Broadway and Colebrook Street experimental traffic regulation order 2021 is made permanent, and that the service lead will be authorised to make and advertise the permanent order. I support those recommendations and will sign off the decision accordingly. The next item on the agenda is the Great Winchester Street and the Square experimental traffic regulation order. And Mr. Tate, you asked earlier if you could make a deputation, so please come forward and make your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to wholeheartedly support this recommended decision, which I feel will consolidate the benefits that the experimental order has already given to this area. Before the implementation of the experimental order, I regularly witnessed drivers intentionally driving the wrong way along Great Winchester Street out of the square as a shortcut across the city. I would, however, point out that food delivery drivers on motorbikes are continuing to use this route as they can navigate past the bollards, so hopefully some thought can be given. Regrettably, also drivers now realise that they can negotiate on both sides of the bollards. Appreciate often tables there, so there are now incidents of drivers trying to negate the effects of the bollards. I believe that as there is no through route from St Swithin Street into the square, this has significantly reduced the number of vehicles using Simmons Street, and this is having a meaningful benefit to residents of Christ Hospital almshouses as they have no pavement on their side of the road, nor do the other properties. And in the past there have been some near misses for residents stepping into the road. With fewer cars and then driving at lower speeds, the road feels much safer, and I've walked that way myself very regularly. I would, however, comment that the signage in the square for loading bays is complicated and confusing, and initially, as officers will know, resulted in many drivers being issued PCN notices. Hopefully over time drivers will get to understand the instructions, and I don't know what the solution is there, but I think that is still causing some friction. At present, parking in the outer close is restricted to residents of Morley College, which is something to be celebrated. And hopefully the cathedral will not revert back to using the area behind 1 to 5 in the City Museum as an informal car park, as this in itself generated significant traffic movements, not only people parking, but people getting there, finding there was no space, and then reversing back, going back through the one-way system. Lastly, I feel while the authorities have limited control over the size of delivery vehicles which service the various businesses in the area, I regularly witness some pretty fraught and challenging situations as over-large vehicles try to negotiate our very narrow streets. The idea of a transshipment centre on the outskirts of the city still seems like a very good idea, although I appreciate almost impossible to implement. But in conclusion, I think this is great news for all sorts of reasons, and I'm grateful, and I hope the Cabinet member will approve his recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tate, and thank you for those detailed and considered comments about the implementation as well, which I hope can be addressed in the discussion that follows. So again, I think Ms. Haskett, you are due to be introducing this paper.
Thank you. So this report details the representations received, the experimental traffic regulation orders in Great Winchester Street and the Square area, and recommends that the orders are made permanent. The static restrictions and the moving traffic restrictions are contained in 2 separate experimental orders for admin and operational reasons. The scheme introduced a pedestrian and cycle zone, Saturday 10 AM to Sunday midnight between 6 and 7 Great Minster Street and the Boots Pharmacy on the Square, allowing local businesses to expand onto the highway with tables and chairs and creating a more pleasant pedestrian environment. Motor vehicles through the square, motor vehicle traffic through the square via Great Minster Street has been prohibited, and bollards installed to reinforce the restrictions. To enable access to properties on Great Minster Street, a one-way restriction has been suspended, providing access and egress via Simmons Street, Little Minster Street, for those residents' properties affected. Amendments have also been made to the loading and waiting and the parking places in order to facilitate the scheme. So during the 6-month consultation period, 3 reps were received, 2 supporting representations and 1 objecting to the scheme. The full details of these representations are found in paragraph 4.8 of the report, along with our response. In reaching the recommendation to make these orders permanent, the objection has been carefully considered. The objection is in relation to additional journey time cost in accessing toilet facilities, and it's acknowledged that the additional travel time is an inconvenience. However, as there are alternative toilets and other facilities and drop-off areas that can be used within the facility, on balance, the positive impact and wide-ranging benefits of the scheme, along with a strong community support, outweigh the objection. The scheme has been very successful and has met its objectives to remove through traffic, support businesses and residents who live and operate in Great Minster Street and the Square area, and to pedestrianise the square. And through the reduction of traffic, it also brings about improvements to air quality, road safety, opportunities for walking and cycling, and provides a safe environment where tables and chairs can be placed on the highway. Due to the benefits of this scheme, it is recommended that both the experimental traffic orders are made permanent.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr. Tate raised the question of people driving around the edge of the barriers, and there was a question raised about the current state of signage, and I wondered if you could provide some extra perspective on that, you or Mr. Hickman.
Yes, there's a few issues raised about that. I think the issue about drivers using the footway to go around the bollards in Great Winchester Street, we are aware of that, and we are looking at ways of sorting that out. Ideally, we would have liked to put a bollard in the footway as well, but there are a number of underground statutory undertakers cables which make that very difficult. So we're looking at an alternative measure, which is probably going to be a smaller signpost that we think we can get in there, which will make it very difficult, well, it'll make it impossible for a car to go around the bollards once we've done that. So we're looking at that. The issue of food delivery mopeds going through there, I think we all know the company involved. They know they're undertaking illegal activity, and I've tried to look into talking to the company, but the company structure is very bizarre. It's very difficult to find someone to talk to. So at the moment we haven't got a solution to that, but I understand that Hampshire County Council are looking into or enforcing moving traffic offences through CCTV, and they're going through the legislation at the moment to enable them to do that. So we'll be talking to Hampshire about this as a potential site to undertake that activity there. I think the other points were around the confusing signage for loading, and yeah, we acknowledge that. It's complicated signing, and that's a reflection of the fact that the requirements of the businesses and the residents were complicated, and we tried to put in there that something perhaps that's trying to please too many people. However, I think it will work over time, and we're taking a sensitive approach to enforcement after the initial flurry of enforcement, which seems to be working better. As long as the area is being used sensibly, I think we're happy to manage it that way. And the only other issue was around freight, and we are looking at freight and transshipment through the Winchester Movement Strategy. We've had a lot of success with a company called Zedify, doing a lot of deliveries or last mile deliveries on bikes and electric vehicles, which is really helping, but we've still got the larger vehicles to sort out. So that's an ongoing discussion as part of the movement strategy.
Thank you very much indeed. One of the questions I know that businesses have raised in the area is, having seen how it supports business at the weekend, was interested in seeing if we would be able to do something similar in the evening. That doesn't preclude agreeing this order today, I imagine, and is something presumably we can consider for inclusion in the next round of traffic regulation orders. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So we can agree the decision today, and then we can look at amending it going forward as part of a new programme. And we've already started some consultation on that in terms of an evening closure. And we'll have to look very carefully at how we manage that in terms of people, again, ignoring the signs and driving in there when it is a pedestrian zone. So again, this area could be part of Hampshire's plans for enforcing via CCTV.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, thank you again for all your work on this, and I would like to, on behalf of the council, thank Tracy Baskett in particular. This has been a complicated programme. It's required a lot of work with local residents. It's required a sensitive and responsive approach, which has meant that the scheme was adjusted several times during the course of its development, which I know does generate a lot of work for the officers involved, but has led towards a sensitive, a good outcome. So I think the city owes you a great deal of thanks for the work that you've done on this. You've made a permanent improvement to how the centre works. You've helped support businesses, improve the area for walking and cycling, cut traffic. make improvements through that to air quality and safety. It's a big win for the city, and it wouldn't have happened without all your hard work. So thank you very much indeed, and I'm very pleased to support the recommendations that the Winchester City Council, Great Minster Street and the Square Winchester Experimental Moving Traffic Order 2021, and the Winchester City Council, Great Minster Street and the Square Winchester Experimental Restriction of Waiting and Loading and Parking Places Order 2021 are made permanent, and that the service lead will be authorised to make and advertise the orders, and I will sign the decisions on that basis. And I believe that brings us to the end of the business before us today. Thank you everybody who's attended. Thank you particularly to Mr. Tate and Councillor Brock for your deputations. Thank you to Mr. Hickman, Ms. Haskett for all the work that you've done and for presenting the papers today. And on that basis, I declare the meeting closed.
It's on video. Where's the one?